Yo. Yeah. Two dudes on the mic, keeping health in sight. Dr. Goodman and Ben making wellness feel right. From workouts to hacks and science that's real. Dudes talking health, the conversation you feel.
All right, guys, welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about data and how we use it in our fitness, the apps that we use, and the wearable devices like this Garmin that we use. And, a lot of us work day jobs and we look at data often. We have two guests today, Mike White and Wes Black, the White and Black crew. In both of their day jobs is at corporations where they look at data quite often. And I've seen it firsthand how you guys have both used data in your fitness. So that's what I want to talk about. I'm really excited about having this conversation. What I use, I already flashed my Garmin. I've had this probably 3 or 4 years. It does a lot for me. It tracks my sleep score, which I look at all the time. I don't know how it does it, but this thing is so accurate to how I feel after I get a night of sleep. It tracks my VO2 max. I track my runs and my bikes and my swims. It also gives me a fitness age, which I find very interesting. Apps I use, I connect this to an app called Connect, and I can look at all of the data, which I do quite often, especially if I'm training for something. It will connect to Strava, which is an app that it's almost like a social platform where you can connect with other individuals. And if, everyone on this call here was on Strava, I could see the runs and the bikes and the different exercises you guys are doing. So that's a lot of fun. And then I also this week I went on a run. I used Nike Run Club, and that is a personalized coach in my ear while I'm going for a run, talking me through a run. It might start out, you got to go slower, start out slow, and then you can do a speed run or whatever it is in different apps like that. So today what I want to do is first introduce Mike White and Wes Black and talk about the apps that they use, and then hear from Casey and get some open dialogue and discussion. Welcome to the podcast. This is the first time I know you listen to it. Mike White is my brother, same last name. Mike, do you want to let us know what do you do for a day job?
Well, the place I'm sitting at right now is where I sit for roughly, Monday to Friday all day, and then sometimes at night as well. I'm on video calls quite often. I work for a company in the information technology space, and we, like most other companies in the world, are looking at things like digital transformation and helping organizations manage through that on multiple sides of the market. And then AI has become, center stage over the last several years. And so we spend a lot of time in that space. So I wouldn't say I definitely like the analysis side, but I'm not like, my day job is not like data analysis. That's just kind of a, part of what the industry does really well that I operate in. So, but yeah, so I'm, in terms of like fitness during the day, I'm at this desk where I'm at right now, and it's a sit-stand desk, which is nice, but, kind of limited movement. So these apps and wearables and that sort of thing are good triggers to get my movement in.
Mike, talk to me about your fitness journey. What kind of stuff do you do for fitness? What have you done in the past?
I was a college athlete. So like, growing up and then going through college, like it was just part of my normal habit. And then when I finished college, I didn't have a team to go play with. Like there was no coach saying you have to get, these kind of milestones complete or that sort of thing. And so I kind of felt like I could turn like the focus on like competitiveness and that drive towards my professional life. And to some degree I have, but I found that it doesn't translate exactly. I need that physical outlet or that physical element. And I'm no longer a college athlete, but I do feel like, it's important to my identity to have this, health and physical element. So new goals, new ways of exercising and being healthy are really important to all aspects of my life. So it's kind of foundational. So my journey has kind of been reborn, I'd say, like after college, and I'm now 43. So it's a long time, but I've gone through several different waves of different types of fitness. So I like to do, I like to run. I really enjoy biking. I like swimming. I like to play soccer. I do all sorts of other I do primal movement. If I know, Ben, you're familiar with it, and I'm not sure if Wes and Casey, you've, done that at all, but I like strength training. I mean, I like to do almost anything that involves movement, jumping on the trampoline with my kids, whatever I could do to get out and get a little bit of a sweat and get my muscles moving. It's like a foundational element of my day.
You talked about jumping on the trampoline with your kids. I'm at my brother-in-law and sister's place, and I went to Sky Zone with my niece the other day. It was one of the best workouts I've had in
It's so
months. It was so much fun, but it was the best workout. Like they got to make that for adults. It was an absolute blast.
Do
Mike, are you?
so I'm probably like you. Like I'm the one of the very few adults jumping around with kids and like bouncing, like because they have trampolines on the walls there. So I'll jump off the walls and try to do flips and stuff. And it's so
Same,
fun.
man. Mike, are you training for anything right now? Any fitness goals or any things coming up?
Nothing specific right now, with the exception of the Murph for dad. Has a goal of doing a Murph on his 71st birthday. And so he started training for it and invited all of his kids and some, other family members to come join him too. So I've added that as a part of my workout routine, but I don't have like a marathon or a triathlon coming up or anything like that. It's October right now, and so kind of the summer events have died off. So I don't have an event that I'm training for right now.
What's the Murph?
So the Murph, you probably know more than I do where it was originated from, but it's a workout where you do like a mile run followed by 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then you finish with another mile run. Did I get that right, Ben?
I believe so, yeah. And
Yeah.
you don't have to do it do you have to do it in any order or?
I don't know. I'm a novice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've enjoyed the training. I've just, kind of started out and I haven't done the full thing yet. I've been building up because these sorts of things like could wreak havoc with injury. And that's something that, in my 30s, I started to take injuries and it was so frustrating. If you hurt an ankle and you can't run for months, it is so frustrating because it takes so long to recover. And that's it's joy in itself, but it adds so much to the rest of my day as well.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Last podcast we had Matt Maldonado on, and he's a bodybuilder, and he talked about peptides, and I was telling him how once I turned 35, like I've had an aching or some kind of pain that just moves around my body at some point. So like avoiding injury is super important, and maybe you can listen to that peptide podcast and see if there's something that can help you out.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, can you tell us about, like, do you wear any wearables? I know you've used some things, and talk a little bit about the stuff you used.
Yeah. As you were talking about, I was thinking as well about like the social aspect of wearables, because I feel like it's helpful to have a dialogue and learn from people, which is why I was so excited about this podcast. I've got a buddy that has a Garmin and he sends me screenshots so often after his workouts of his VO2 max tracking. It is incredible. It is so cool too, because he lives in Costa Rica, but he travels a lot. And one of the places he goes often is Ecuador. And there's a huge altitude difference when he goes, and he trains for, he's a strong marathon runner. And when he goes to Ecuador, his VO2 max really drops. And then it picks right back up when he goes back to Costa Rica where he lives. So I think it's really interesting. I use a Garmin. That's the most prominent one. I got the Garmin because I started to learn about like, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, 4, 5. And as I was training for triathlons, I felt like that's something that I should try to dial in a little bit more specifically. Again, that was an injury prevention idea. But then I learned all these different things about the Garmin, which are, I've started to implement as well. I think the sleep score is really a cool one to play with because, I can usually tell if I slept well or not, but the score puts a number to it. And then if I backtrack into what I've done the day before, did I exercise? Did I drink much water? Did I drink alcohol? Like sitting on the ground and stretching for just a couple minutes while my kids are getting ready for bed or something like that, that helps my sleep score. All these different things are like triggers to and going back to the data side, it's like the data can tell you one thing, but if you can look at, what causes the data to change, it's very empowering. I find anyways.
Yeah, we've
So
had a conversation about the sleep score, and like for me, if I have one drink or more, like every one drink, my sleep score on my Garmin might drop by 5 points, and it's like clockwork. It doesn't matter, and I don't know how this thing does it. It's just crazy to that this device can understand how I sleep, but really how I feel. And I'll actually wake up in the morning. I'll take a guess, and like I think I got a 95 or a 75 or whatever it is backing into it, like, and I feel like that rested, but this thing is so accurate. So it's a lot of fun to understand like what drives up and down the sleep score.
So I wasn't super confident that my Garmin was accurate on my heart rate, and so I got a Whoop, and I'd wear the Whoop and the Garmin while I'd go on a bike ride or a run or something like that, and then I'd look at the scores and that sort of thing. And I found that the Garmin is actually very accurate. There was a little bit of a difference between the two. Usually, when it was like if I went for a run and it was cold outside, and I did like stairs or sprints or something like that, if it's cold outside, the Garmin didn't respond as quickly. The Whoop would more accurately reflect, okay, like your heart rate's way up, and the Garmin would catch up over a minute or so. So it wasn't like a terrible thing, especially on a longer run or something like that where I'm not sprinting. Not an issue. And then at the end, it would say what my average score was, and the trend line would look the same. But that was the only difference, is like just like in the 30 seconds or so, like during the sprint or stair climb or whatever it was, it would be a little bit more accurate there.
That's fascinating. You're throwing data on data to look and seeing how accurate they are.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's the Whoop? I know the Garmin, it's this. I watch, I can look at it. What's the Whoop?
Yeah, the Whoop is it's just a so it was a few years ago, so I'm sure they've come out with new models since then. But it just you wore it around my arm. It just went around my forearm, and it's not a watch. I think that only measures your heart rate. Like it's very specific to that. But when attached to an app, you can add all sorts of other things like distance and elevation change and that sort of thing. Because the app, I hit go on the app and it would start tracking, and it's like basically kind of duplicated Strava. So I'd be running Strava, my watch, and Whoop, and I felt like that was way too much. It was nice testing just to see what the accuracy was. And it's interesting too, because Strava oftentimes actually will give me a different distance and elevation gain than my Garmin will. So, I don't know why that is, but it happens, So anyways, there's a margin of error in all of these probably. But
Hey, Mike,
it's been
was the recovery of your heart rate back to resting also delayed if it was
yeah.
cold outside in the Garmin?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and
interesting.
it was generally when it was cold outside, because if I was, doing stairs in the summertime or something like that, it was pretty, pretty accurate. I mean, again, this is like 30 seconds off. It wasn't like a huge delay, but still, when your recovery is, 1 minute versus a minute 30,
Yeah,
considerable.
it matters, I think, when it comes to health and fitness and when you're measuring certain things, the time it takes for you to recover is a good signal about the fitness of your, neurobiology and your nervous system in general, your sympathetic and parasympathetic tone and how well you can adjust, how quickly you can adjust. And I think that's kind of the whole basis between like why we measure heart rate variability, is to kind of measure our tone and see how well your body can adjust, and how quickly it can adjust to certain things. So it might not matter to most people, but if you're really trying to get into the weeds on, how well your body can recover from a quick insult and like ramp up when it needs to ramp up and then cool down when it needs to cool down, then that might be
Yeah.
it's not insignificant.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Casey, you're saying that an individual that has vigorous exercise and then can stop and then quickly recover and have a more normalized heart rate that's what we want.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, so sympathetic tone in your body refers to like your fight response. Like when you're in a stressful situation, you need your sympathetic nervous system to ramp up so that you can like fight, run, do what you need to do. And then once the threat is gone or the stressful stimulus is gone, your body needs to, tone it back down. And that toning back down is your parasympathetic nervous system. It's just the complement to the other one. And so when you have better parasympathetic tone and you have a lower resting heart rate and you can quickly get your heart rate down from high, so that the rate of change, then it signals that you have, better adaptation of your parasympathetic system, and that is a predictor independently of fitness and mortality risk. So like how likely you are to die of any given cause. So people with better parasympathetic tone tend to not die as frequently, and they tend to be more fit.
Gotcha. Okay.
And sorry, I also quick correction. I said Whoop. It's a Wahoo. Actually, I'd forgotten. I know the Whoop is another device, and I'm not a like. I'm honored that you invited me to this podcast, but I'm like, and I like these wearables, and I've experimented
Yeah.
with you, but I'm not
Glad for
like
the clarification because we're about to launch the Wahoo on this podcast.
It's called a
So we've
Wahoo.
got the Whoop, the Wahoo, and the Wee.
It's called a Wahoo, Mike.
Wahoo. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Can I go back to the Garmin actually? I think what you're saying is super interesting. I want to go back to the Garmin and see, like, I named a few things that I use in the data I look at. You know, my VO2 max, it will give me my runs, my bike rides, my swim, my fitness age. Wes, you wear the Garmin as well. Is there anything else that you use it for? Is it anything that I'm missing?
Well, the original reason that I kind of chose Garmin to go down that path, and I've probably had maybe 4 Garmins over the last, 15 plus years. My dad actually gave me one way back in the day. Super ancient. It took like 10 minutes for the GPS to link up. So you just had to kind of like turn it on outside. And now the GPS locks on in like, a few seconds, which is really cool. But the reason I kept following Garmin was because of the multi-sport function. It's really built for triathlons, triathletes, where like Apple Watch, and I think I don't know about Whoop, but those don't have really a triathlon function. So when you're going from swim to bike to run, that was really the only watch or wearable that was set up for that. So that's kind of why I went down that path with the multi-sport function. But I use it for a lot of things. I use it for when we go stand-up paddleboarding. I'll turn it on. It tracks how many paddles, how quickly you're going, the heart rate zones, distance. So stand-up paddleboarding is a cool function. I use it for yoga. That's a fun one to track. You can track how many poses you do. So like if you're doing like a yin yoga session, you could do, maybe you're doing 10 or 15 poses. You could track that. When I'm doing a flow, I just kind of use it to track heart rate zones. Hot yoga is another one, like where your heart rate gets really up there. So it's one thing that I have used it for is to track heart rate zones. Trying to get about 3 hours of zone 2 in every week and about, 20 minutes plus in zone 4, zone 5. So trying to track every different activity. And one that's really interesting is actually the strength training function on it, because I am just like bewildered by that one. So I'll do a workout, try to pull one up here to show you, but I'll do a workout and it will actually know what exercises I'm doing. So it'll highlight like which muscles.
What?
Baffling to me. But then more than that, it'll even tell me which exercise I did and the reps, and then I put in the weight too. Just really quickly, you can use the buttons to dial in the weight. So I haven't played with it too much where you could probably export that data and track it. I track my workouts kind of separately, but that way you can kind of incrementally increase your strength training. But yeah, it'll say like, deadlift, 12 reps. I don't know how, just from this
I know.
little thing.
And you're just doing the movement. You're doing the movement. You don't put in any information other than the weight.
Yeah, I just start the set, and then and Casey's seen me use it. Like it's barely any activity. It's not like I'm sitting there for 10 minutes dialing in every.
Yeah, he's lying to you.
exercise.
He's typing it in.
He's looking at Instagram.
Yeah, he's
How
got one
about
of those
for-
old school Casio watches where he's just like, "Oh, dude, this is an amazing
keyboard.
wearable."
How about for HIIT workouts when you do like one thing to the next?
I haven't tracked that. I wonder if there is a hit function. I don't know if you know that there is or not.
There is one, but I like it's very sad. Like I just haven't experimented with it.
That would be a cool one too. If you'd probably maybe transition. I haven't used that
Is it
setting
ever
on this.
frustrating to like have to like, you get done with your set and you got to make sure you remember to beep it, and then you're about to go back and you got to beep it again. And if I don't know, I feel like that would for me, I'd be like, geez, like I just want something that I just leave on, and it can just tell when I'm recovering and when I'm going for it and all that stuff.
I think though, one of the things I really like about it is actually the rest timer. So like in between bench press or, like a squat or something that's a little bit more intense, I'll make sure to rest like at least 3 minutes. But if I'm doing something like a shoulder or lateral raises or something, I'll just rest like a minute, or curls. So that it's not really tedious for me. I like to just hit the timer every time.
So it
I
forces you to
wonder.
kind of be like deliberate and conscious of like your recovery times, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And then I wonder if you're like racking weights or something, if the watch would, I don't know, get a little thrown
Yeah, if
off
you don't
by
turn it
that
off and
movement.
then you're doing some other like
Like if you just
reps.
had it running and it was trying to pick it all up. I don't know what that would look like. But yeah, so those are the main things. Like you said, the sleep score. You guys talked about like how alcohol affects it, how I feel like for me, seeing that score really helped me prioritize sleep and get a regular routine in. So that's been awesome too. And then actually, Ben, you didn't mention it, but one of my favorites is the body battery.
But
Because
yeah, that's right.
that's like it's like those old video games where you have the health bar and it just kind of goes down throughout the day. And
That's
when you
awesome.
hit 5, you're just
Toast.
knackered. Yeah,
How do you
Yeah,
use
you
toast.
are knackered.
like how
So
do
it's,
You need
you
a
yeah,
5 hour
5 to
energy.
100. Yeah, it goes from
You
5 to 100.
Yeah.
You do. Like you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I woke up with my body batteries at 95, or hopefully it's, in the 90s or above. I've woken up where it's below 50 and I knew I slept terribly. Like you're just toast the rest of the day. Usually that's after like a camping trip or something like that. But yeah, that's a good call out the body battery, Wes.
You guys are getting into some weird VR future where we're literally going to gamify our entire lives. Like there's going to be some music, some implantable device in your brain that has a soundtrack, and then when you eat something, it's going to be like, and then you're going to see your body battery go up, and then as you go down the day, like people are going to
Super
be living
Mario.
in total different biometric realities in the future. It's like Black Mirror type stuff.
Yeah, we might be. Mike, do you wear any other wearables? We talked about Garmin and the Wahoo. Anything else you wear?
not regularly, but I will occasionally. I had a continuous glucose monitor and I paired it with the Levels app, which I thought was pretty cool. Actually, that was an interesting app. There's other apps that I think do the same thing, but it was cool because I'd take a picture of whatever I was eating, like a salad, and it would name everything in the salad. Like if I had 4 asparagus spears, it would say 4 asparagus spears, and
That's
it
pretty
gives
accurate.
nutritional value with everything too. And it's so accurate. I mean, you can adjust it after it comes back, but it'll say like mixed green salad, broccoli, walnuts, 4 asparagus spears, ranch dressing. And, it's just surprising how accurate that is. But it's really interesting too, because when paired with the continuous glucose monitor, I could see how my, glucose was reacting. And I don't wear it regularly, but there was, I don't know, maybe a month that I wore it because I wanted to do some testing with things and get some data. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that you could do to really help your glucose that, again, having that number and something that's trackable it's really informative. And taking a walk after a meal is really helpful. Knowing what my body specifically reacts to is really helpful too. It was so if pizza, like I get a huge spike with pizza, I'm sure most people do, but with ice cream I don't. Like I like it, like ice cream like does not affect my blood glucose, at least as far as the numbers go. I mean, a little bit, but nothing like you would expect, a
Yeah.
bowl of ice cream to do. So it's
Casey, you want to
interesting to get some more precision on that.
Casey, you want to do a quick one on blood glucose and how it affects us and impacts us?
Yeah, sure. So I think particularly the recent interest, I think, in metabolic health and metabolic fitness, you could say, is probably the reason that we've had a good amount of, well, that and just the diabetes epidemic, right, that we live in. But that's kind of goes hand in hand with, I think, the concern people have about it. I think there's been some good money and research that have gone into, making measuring your glucose as easy as possible and as cheap as possible for people because it's, obviously if you have diabetes, it's life changing. And I have immediate family members that deal with it. And if they had to, pay exorbitant amounts of money or anything like that, like if it wasn't easy for them to monitor their diabetes, then obviously their lives would just be miserable. So I think we've gotten to a really good place with tracking sugar where it's gotten easier and easier. And now we're basically at the point where, should you choose to, or if you have the right diagnosis, you can basically have your continuous monitor right here on the back of your arm or wherever it goes, and see how different activities and dietary input affects, your sugar level. And we're kind of using it as a replacement or like an indicator of general metabolic health. So glucose is probably uniquely useful because it varies so quickly. You can spike up really high and then get down really low in pretty quick order. And if you are, eating a meal and then your sugar is just spiking and staying high for a very long time, that's a good indicator that you're not metabolizing the sugar or moving it to where it needs to go. And all of that kind of indicates that your general metabolic health is probably not where it needs to be. And then we know that over long stretches of time, uncontrolled glucose contributes greatly to cardiovascular risk. So your risk of heart attack and stroke go up over time with, poorly controlled sugar. And so I think it's useful because number one, just controlling it better is going to decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease. But also, it indicates that generally speaking, your metabolic health is probably not where it needs to be. And so, if you have that as a constant reminder, then that's a good kick in the pants to sort of, start looking into why you may not be as optimized.
Casey, could we say that? Because earlier on, we were talking about the heart rate, and as we do vigorous exercise, it coming down quickly to homeostasis was what we wanted to do and bring it. Is it the same thing when we spike our blood sugar? Like individuals that might have diabetes or pre-diabetic might have their levels raised for a longer time and then it will come down, or am I making that up?
No, I don't think you're totally off base. I don't want to say too much too concretely because I don't know the science that well, like the actual literature. But I would say in general, if I saw a person who ate a meal, had a quick spike in sugar, but it very quickly normalized and they kind of went back down to regular levels, I would not be worried as a physician. I would say, oh yeah, that's pretty normal physiologic response, like that you're, getting back down to a normal level. But if your sugar ramped up and then stayed up and didn't come down quickly, then I would say, your cells are having a tough time transporting the glucose into the cell and then utilizing it and using it to create ATP and get yourself some energy. And that could be a sign of insulin resistance, which is a great indicator of metabolic disease. It could be a sign that your mitochondria are not functioning well and they're not able to, get the glucose down to pyruvate and then throw it through the electron transport chain and get yourself some energy. There's lots of different, inferences you could make from that. But generally speaking, I would say, yeah, that would be a marker that of a healthier person that they're able to control. If you eat, Mike, that's very interesting that you eat a bowl of ice cream and it doesn't spike as much, but you eat pizza and it spikes like crazy. And that I think speaks to the larger question of, what does our diet actually mean for an individual? We can't just blanket say like, don't eat carbs. It's like, well, that's not true. Number one, you need carbs. And number two, obviously, different delivery systems affect your ability to metabolize carbohydrates, in a different way. So it's a little more nuanced, I think, than we give it credit for. But yeah, we're generally speaking, I would say I'm less worried about the guy that can very quickly correct their glucose levels and keep them at a normal, healthy level than I am about the guy who's, chronically unable to do that.
Yeah. Mike, this one's fascinating to me. What are some other things you ate? You talked about pizza that spiked it, ice cream didn't. What'd you say about alcohol?
Yeah, I don't remember having a big takeaway for alcohol. And this is like specific to me. So somebody else is going to have like no reaction to pizza and a huge reaction to ice cream, right? So it's interesting to find that precision around, the way my body reacts. But I don't remember alcohol being a big takeaway. If I had like a avocado toast on sourdough bread, that was like totally fine. I think the biggest things were pizza was the biggest reaction for me. And that was my big takeaway. Salad wasn't too big of a reaction, but if I had ranch dressing on it as opposed to like olive oil, then there was a decent size difference. There's definitely a noticeable difference there. But the other thing was my activity made a huge difference as well. If I got up and went for a run before work and then ate poorly the rest of the day or well the rest of the day, my glucose wasn't so variable throughout the day. It stayed pretty normalized. But if I got up and did kind of my normal routine, usually I do I don't eat until about noon or so. And then, I had a salad for lunch and, went for a walk or something after that, like totally normal, activity, but just missed a morning workout, then my my glucose would be, spiking and dipping, quite significantly. So that morning workout made a huge difference for the way, I was able to metabolize food for the rest of the day.
Casey, I think we could do a whole episode on this. I kind of want to get one. I think we should get them and check it out. That'd be super fun.
100%, dude. Yeah, you sold me, Mike. You sold me.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you wear that, Mike? The
Just on
glucose
the back of the
monitor?
arm. Yeah,
Back of the
it's
arm?
plugged in the back of the arm, and I think they last somewhere between 10 and 14 days.
Are they cumbersome?
No, no, you don't even notice them. Yeah. Mine started to like after, I think mine was 14 days. And after like day 12 or so, it started to like a little bit peel off, like just the sticky part. But then I've seen some that are like super small, like they're the size of a dime. And
Yeah.
so no, not cumbersome. I
That's
don't wear
super
it
fun.
anymore. I mean, like I said, I wore it for a month. It was kind of a test period and I wanted to, just have that as insight. And so, but I also feel like with all these metrics, I find them helpful, but I don't want I don't want to manage my day by looking at the metrics on my phone on how my body is reacting to everything. It's a good kind of North Star guide. And every so often, do some tests to get a little bit more precision around myself. But I mean, you can quantify so many things on your body these days, and doesn't mean you should quantify everything. And some people want to, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
For myself, it's like there's a healthy mix here uh, because once you kind of know the right activities to do, it's just a matter of like actually doing them and like staying persistent with your good habits.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, I want to jump over to Wes a little bit because he talked about the Garmin, but Wes, can we dive into a little bit about the kind of workouts you do, and then I want to go into what wearables and other devices and metrics you're tracking.
Yeah, so when I'm, kind of at my best, I feel like I'm doing about four strength training sessions. I like to work out in the mornings, and then I'll do about four cardio sessions, try to do like three zone two, run, bike, something like that, maybe Stairmaster, and then one more like mountain biking, one or two mountain biking rides. We're getting into zone four, zone five. And then I like to do about three yoga sessions um, per week too. So I find if I get two or three yoga sessions in, I'm really feeling good. I feel like that helps me stay healthy and away from injury, just keeping all my joints lubricated and mobility going. So that's been probably the most, like, I love to lift, I love to run and bike, but yoga's probably been the most impactful thing I've added to what I do. I find it life changing, actually.
Wes, so you're doing 10 or 11 like fitness exercises, workouts in a week?
That's kind of my goal. I don't always hit it, but I feel like that's a really good balance of mobility, cardio, and then strength training. Yeah.
Wes, I met you probably 5 years ago, and since then, like your fitness has like just completely changed, I'd say. Originally, when I met you to about 2 years later, I think you had dropped or lost what, 30 or 40 pounds?
Yeah. So absolutely, man. That goes to show like the kind of the company you keep is really important. I think meeting you and being really into biking, and that was really inspiring to me. So appreciate, definitely thank you for that. And then I think just again, changing some habits, and then like learning more about cardio, learning more about strength training, learning more about yoga and stuff, just like kind of led to getting those habits in place. And then actually, as far as the weight loss, I think really the main thing was diet and decreasing how much I was eating or calories I was taking in. For that, I actually use an app called Macro Factor. That's a really good app. So I found that tracking my weight every day, just on a normal scale, and then tracking my calorie intake, I was able to find about like my baseline calories. So I burn about 3,000 calories a day. Almost doesn't even matter what I do. That's kind of about what I burn, I find. So just on average, I guess. And
Even when
then,
you're not doing 10 to 11 workouts a week?
I didn't really, I haven't really seen much of a difference when maybe I've always kept pretty accurate, but like I guess if I took a day off or a couple days off, I didn't really notice a difference in my like caloric expenditure. I assume there was one, but I didn't really notice a big difference.
Yeah.
And then, but I just kind of saw that it's not really an exact science because your weight fluctuates so much. You kind of have to use like a moving average. like a 7-day moving average kind of is what I found. And then, but yeah, the macro factor is pretty cool. It's not quite as cool as levels where you can just take a picture, but you can like scan the barcode of something and then use a food scale to measure out how much I was eating, 100 grams, 200 grams, whatever. It'll calculate all the proteins, fats, carbs, and then calories. And then it also tracks micronutrients too, which is kind of cool. Because if you get into like a habit where you're trying to eat a really specific diet, a lot of times you eat the same thing all the time. And so you can miss like magnesium or something. And since you're eating the same thing every day, it's really important to have a good coverage of all your micronutrients, even inside of your macronutrients. This is an interesting one. I found out, and I actually want to talk to you about this more in detail, Casey, but I just found out this week that a protein powder I was using has really high levels of lead. So it was just came out in this study, and I've been using this protein powder every day for almost 3 years, which is like way above the recommended exposure to lead. So that's an interesting one.
I think we just figured out what Wes's issue has been for the last few years.
I actually think I did. I mean, I want to talk to you more about that, but that's kind of interesting. So,
That is
but
very interesting.
you use the same thing every day. It's really important what your routine is there. So, macro factor, and then I haven't done the glucose monitor though. That sounds like a lot of fun. We did have one sitting at the house that somebody gave to us, but haven't actually tried it yet. So looking forward to doing that after hearing from Mike there.
Yeah. Anything we're missing that you guys use in terms of the wearables? It's the Garmin, it was the Wahoo, it was the glucose monitor. I know we talked about the apps of levels Mike used, which sounds awesome. I'm going to check that one out. And then what is it, macronutrient, that Wes uses? Do you guys use any other apps or any other devices? Haven't been mentioned.
Occasionally, I wouldn't say any with any like regularity. I do. Those are kind of the big ones.
Yeah. I think, as we talk about these, you think about where all of this started, and it was just kind of tracking steps. It was like, get your 10,000 steps. So I'm really interested to see where we go in the future. What's next with how central AI is to everything we do. If I look at ChatGPT, I took a peek at what people value the most in terms of popularity, and this is, you could just look on ChatGPT, and so 1 through 8, I did 1 through 8, and it says first they care most about steps and daily activity because it's easy to understand, and you can say, hey, I want to get 10,000 steps in a day. The next one is sleep, which we talked about, and I can relate. I definitely care a lot about how I sleep. Duration and quality, and the calories burned. That's an interesting one. Yesterday, I actually looked at my watch accidentally. Usually I don't look at this one, but it said, I had gone for a hike. I had biked. I had, I'm with my friend Dan, and of course, every time I'm with him, I burn over 1,000 calories, active calories in a day. So that's the next one. The heart rate we talked about, resting heart rate variability, SpO2, that's blood oxygen. That's an interesting one. Casey, what are they tracking there?
Basically, a laser goes through your skin, and depending on like the color, the wavelengths of light that get absorbed and measured by the receptor on the watch, can tell you how much oxygen is attached to the cell in there. So like how much hemoglobin you're carrying and all that stuff. And that's basically just how they measure how oxygenated your blood is.
My Garmin will measure that. Depending on style, I mean, you might have that too. It kills the battery, but it also, I think there's a specific use case for it, right? Is it, Casey, am I right? Like mine's always very stable. I think like 98, 99, something like that. But there are people that do have a risk here, and I'm just not sure what the use case is.
Yeah, 100%. There is people that, we put them on oxygen all the time, right? If they have like COPD or something of that nature. But specifically for oxygen, there's probably certain things that would be beneficial to the entire population to measure all the time. Heart rate is, I think, one of them, right? If you're, from a very basic standpoint, if everybody had a wearable and we had everybody's heart rate and it was just going, and then all of a sudden one of those stops, well, there could be things in place, right? Where emergency people are contacted, next of kin is contacted, like an alert goes out to somebody. There's very practical applications to these things. I know Apple Watches can detect if I fall down a mountain, and emergency responders can then get the GPS and go and check it out. And like people have been saved by these kinds of things. So
wow.
Those types of interventions I think will definitely come, and I'm excited to see like what public health impacts they have. VO2 max I think is probably for select people, or I should say oxygenation is important, right? Like that's probably the use case you're talking about. So if my dad, if they had COPD or something, and I wanted to know what his oxygen level was at all times just to make sure that he was okay, that would be, incredibly helpful to have, as a physician and as a family member or whoever. But for the lay person, it's probably more like, oh, I want to track my performance. I want to make sure that I'm preventing disease, preventing injury, and maximizing my potential in the future. So like VO2 max, having a good one is probably one of the most important predictors of health span and lifespan that we have. And so for most of us that don't wear wearables and don't know that, we really don't know like how we're doing. And I think progress measured is progress achieved, right? So once you start measuring it, all of a sudden you're like, oh man, like I should probably run a bit more, or I should probably get into some zone 2 cardio because I need to get my VO2 max optimized because that at least is some bulwark against aging and disease and death and morbidity. And so there's that bottom level of actionable things that I think everybody could kind of benefit from. Heart rate's one of those. And then there's other stuff that's like a cut above where it's like, well, if you really want to measure this because you want to optimize performance and you're really looking into preventative health, then these are for you, right? And that might be something like a lactate threshold. Like we have continuous glucose monitors. I think maybe not implantable devices. I think we'll get there for sure. Insertables, like this glucose monitor that you wear for 14 days and then you can chuck it. They can measure a lot more probably than glucose. They could measure your lactate and you could see what your kind of threshold is and how it's doing. And that's a great indicator of how well your body can, get into aerobic and out of aerobic metabolism quickly. And that for someone that's training and for someone that's interested in that, that could be a nice little marker of progress. You could say, hey, look, my lactate threshold is just not where I want it to be. I need to get into some more training.
How do you
That's probably
improve
the
that?
next. You train basically. Zone 2 cardio is probably one of the best things you can do to improve your lactate clearing. And lactate clearing is not metabolizing lactate, it's not breaking it down, it's getting it recycled basically. So you exercise and you're using glucose, but you get to a certain point where you outpace your body's ability to clear the lactate that's used as a byproduct of metabolism. And so once that threshold hits and you can't, you're outpacing yourself, lactate builds up in your system and then your body has to go and shunt it to different places. It takes it across into less glycolytic cells. And so you can recycle it and chuck it back into the Krebs cycle and use it for more energy production. You can take it through the Cori cycle in the liver and create glycogen from it. So it's like your body's ability to recycle excess lactate when you're in one of those metabolic states is what we talk about when we talk about clearing lactate. And so if you train often, your mitochondria are going to be optimized. So their ability to handle the influx of pyruvate from, the that my name is by that process, right? They're going to be able to handle it and create energy for you. But then, so as that ability gets bigger, then all of a sudden your lactate threshold climbs higher. You can do more exercise at a higher level before it starts building up in your system. So you just got to prime the machinery and optimize the machinery by using it. And I don't think you have to use it strategically. That's why zone 2 training is really, really important. And then like Wes was kind of saying, like getting up into zone 3, 4, 5, whatever, on occasion as well has value for sure.
Casey, as a physician, I have a question for you. Because I think there's a huge opportunity to like take any person's wearable information and feed it into a system that, helps give either more real time or just more precision feedback. Like I'm not a doctor, but so as much as I try to learn about all these different things, like the level of precision that you can come up with, like just because you've studied it and you're in it on a day-to-day basis is really, what else to look for as well. Like what are the blind spots? Like I think I'm doing really good on this, but like I'm totally missing on something else. So for example, like if Wes was, I don't know when he started yoga, but if a couple of years ago you were to have a real-time feed of his 11 workouts per week, and you're looking at that, and he's going to you as a physician, like, could that feed into a system, or how close are we for that feeding into a system where you can look at it and say, listen, you're highly active, looks like you're doing all the right things, I see your macros, like, that's awesome. Why don't you start to plug in a little bit of yoga? I think that might be life-changing for you.
Mhm.
And that sort of a prompt or alert or early alert about something that might not be measured otherwise. Sleep data, all this data. Is it overwhelming, or is it just is it something that the physicians don't want because there's too much information, or is that something that is actually in the foreseeable future?
No, I think it's definitely coming. 100% it's coming. So I think from a high level standpoint, physicians are trained a certain way, and we're not trained we're not sitting in front, like when I give a patient in front of me, I don't have their VO2 max, their grip strength, their
Yeah.
glucose stability, their heart rate variability in front of me. What I have is blood pressure, heart rate, usually oxygen level, and a few other vital signs. Right,
Yeah.
that's what we have, vital signs. So the vital sign measurement is a tale as old as time. We've been measuring that stuff for years, right, decades, centuries, and I think that dictates kind of how we talk about health. Right? Oh yeah, you look like you're doing good. Your vitals are good. So if I have more information, I think, to your point, I could make way better decisions and way better analysis of this person sitting in front of me because I have better data and not just this snapshot of a few little things. That being said, we're not trained to analyze that every time, day in, day out, when you're in medical school and residency. And so it's not second nature. Like, I look at a set of vital signs and I already kind of get this little, quick snapshot in my head of the stability of a patient in front of me. And I don't really have to think about it too much. So I think right now we're in the zone where people just have to think about it. And for doctors that are already, they've been doing that for 11 years in training, and then now, 5, 10 years, 20 years of practice, it's kind of like, okay, that's a lot to ask of me, who I've been sitting here kind of just analyzing that stuff and putting a lot of effort into it. But it would absolutely help us make better decisions and create more accurate and better analyses. The second kind of practical point is that if you have concrete data on every patient that comes in and I see how well they're doing, for someone like yourself or for Wes or for Ben, primary care doctoring right now is probably not going to give you much added insight into your position because we're here to get the big outliers, right? Oh my gosh, your sugar is way out of whack. We need to treat your diabetes. Oh, your blood pressure is just through the roof. We need to treat your high blood pressure. But the chances are you, by virtue of having measured all this stuff and you come into my office with all the data, you're probably the guy that's active and doing all the right things. And so maybe once in a while I'll catch someone that's doing all the same things you're doing and their glucose is still really high. And I'd be like, okay, well, actually, maybe I should get you over to an endocrinologist and do some further studies or something. Or maybe I should get you on a medication. But it's just primary care nowadays is kind of built for the lay population that really doesn't do this. And then now we are handling all the things that go wrong when people aren't optimizing their lifestyles. And unfortunately now we're, for better or for worse, infusing it with pharmacology to try and correct for the detriment of their lifestyle and diet and exercise and stuff. Because everybody kind of knows in the doctoring world that if everybody ate well, active every day, did what you guys are doing, we would prescribe 100% less medications probably across
Yeah.
the board. We're not
It
doing it
sounds
on purpose. We're not in love with meds and we just think that's the best way to go. It's just the nature of the beast. People don't do it. And so if I can't convince you to exercise every day, well, I got to give you a medicine. I got to give you something to bring this down so that you don't die of a stroke or a heart attack, in the next 5 to 10 years.
it
So
sounds
it's
like
just
it's
kind of
reactive, not proactive.
it is. It's very reactive. So there's people in primary care like myself who want to be more proactive. And so what I do with my seniors is I throughout the year take them through every month when I see them or whatever it is, I make sure I have a functional capacity scale that I do a test and I give them a score. And then I have, mood and anxiety and depression scales. We have cognition, all that stuff. We do a lab panel and I'm looking at their micronutrient panel. I ask them about their diet. I ask them about their exercise habits so that by the end of the year, I've built kind of this profile of how they are. because I want to see when stuff starts to kind of fall off. And that's the basis of primary care, right? We have tons of objective tests that we measure, and when that thing starts to fall off, we intervene. And
Hmm.
so if you can optimize that with these kinds of wearables, where you just walk into my office and your grip strength test is done because you got a ring on and it's just measuring your grip strength every time you're doing a workout or something. That's awesome. Now I don't have to get you on a device and have you squeeze and do all that stuff. If it's measuring how well you're balanced, right? Your gait stride, your gait speed, your balance and stability, then I can all of a sudden start to be like, oh, look, your get up and go test is compromised. Because that's what I do with my seniors. I do a get up and go test, right? A sit to stand in a chair. But I imagine there's a day coming where we might wear, a ring, and then you might have some kind of sticker or something on, like, various spots in your body, or an insertable like the glucose monitor. I don't know, something. There's one on your toe, there's one here, and you're getting like a real-time EKG and real-time biometrics, like their gait stride length is this, and their shuffling, actually, which is an early sign of like Parkinson's disease, and their balance is way off, so I need to get them into physical therapy to get them some balance and functional training. So like those kinds of things, I view as a doctor, that would be the most impactful. If I could have some real quality data that replaces all of these little tests that I do, because I invite
Yeah.
them into my office and I do the test, then that just makes my life easy. They come in, the
Yeah.
test is done because they're wearing their wearables, and I just do the analysis. And
Like
Yeah.
then you
send them
start getting
like
into, well, yeah,
like a month
AI
before
could
their
analyze this stuff pretty easy too,
Casey,
but
for someone here, like the 40-year-old man trying to optimize their health and their longevity, what would be, let's say, 5 markers that you would look at that you'd say, okay, this is what you should improve, or this is what you should focus on? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here,
no,
but
that's
is
okay.
there?
I think because I'm 39, so I'm right there. And apart from looking into the abyss of nothingness that inevitably befalls us all, and we all life is meaningless, and we're going into just total darkness. There are
We
some
might
things
edit that
that
one.
I'm concerned about. I'm just going into my first midlife crisis, guys. So just bear with me here, okay?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think for me, and what I value, and what I think most guys in our stage of life value, I think VO2 max has got to be like top of the list. What is my capacity for aerobic exercise, and am I going to maximize that as much as I can, because that's just going to decline as I get into old age, and I want to be able to do stuff. I want to feel good. I don't want to feel out of breath taking my groceries in from my car, carrying my kid, whatever. And I don't want to be a burden to my children when I get to a ripe old age. Eventually I will, but I'd rather be an embarrassment to them than a burden. And so that's the big one. Other stuff I think would be really cool is obviously sleep quality. Hugely underrated, I think, and underutilized by physicians like myself. Our tracking of sleep is basically me asking people, how well do you sleep? Do you feel rested during the day? How many hours are you getting? But if we really want to know how they're doing, I got to send them for a sleep study. They got to go spend the night in a clinic somewhere, and they put all the fancy stuff on them, and they actually measure how their sleep is. And they come out and they go, oh, their sleep is horrible, and they've got apneic episodes up the wazoo. And I'm sitting there going, oh, that explains a lot. And so it's just kind of like, it's silly that we're not taking more advantage of these kind of devices for that in general. The next one would probably be heart rate variability. I just think your ability to recover from a stressful event or bout of exercise is a really good indicator of health in general. And if it's not happening, then especially in someone who actually tries to exercise a little bit, if they're finding that, oh, like I'm not getting back to rest quickly enough, then I think that gives you some idea of like, well, maybe we should be looking into how well you're doing with your axis and your neurobiology. Other than that, something that would be fun. Or no, I think glucose is a good one. Glucose, like a continuous glucose monitor, seems like more and more it's a good indicator of metabolic health. And I think it also encourages you to look deliberately at your diet and your exercise routine, which, if people could just pay attention to what they eat, and if they just knew what it did to their body, they would make better choices. And that would be a huge impact on health in general. And then lastly, probably something like a lactate threshold or something like that, just to let you know how well you're doing, or if you need to get a little bit more zone 2 cardio in. But that's probably just like a cut above, right, for the people that are really interested in performance and stuff.
Casey, you
Casey
talked about
said,
HRV, and is there like a metric you could put on that, or because that's one that I'm not that familiar with? Is there a metric, or are you familiar with what that should be?
No, I don't know the specific numbers. I know that, there's a lot of really smart guys that work with like Whoop and work with these devices to kind of give you a good idea of what the numbers should be. I just know that higher heart rate variability generally equates to better adaptive capacity. If your heart rate does not vary much, whether you're hustling and bustling or whether you're coming down from a routine, like you can kind of imagine that your body's not adapting to the stressors of a normal environment, like your body can't ramp up when it needs to ramp up and it can't cool down when it needs to cool down. But if there's greater variability, it can ramp up when it needs to, it can get back to normal when it needs to. It's nice and, nice and smooth that way. Then that's a better indicator of, adaptability and overall health.
But what about resting heart rate? Is that something we want to be lower, or does it matter?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like the lower the better. Like we don't need to be Lance Armstrong here, we don't need to be in the 30s all the time. But generally speaking, a lower resting heart rate is better. And I would say it's both better. Yeah, your heart kind of has like a fixed number of beats like built into its capacity, and the quicker you get through those beats, the sooner you die. And so you want it to be nice and slow because you don't want to overdo it, and you want to just kind of keep it, I don't know, you don't want your heart overworking. It's going to get thick like a muscle, it's going to grow, and that compromises the blood flow in and out of it. You want it to be healthy and maneuverable and, all that stuff. So that's just like one thing about heart rate. You just want to keep it low for that reason. But then also it's an indicator. It's an indicator of the neural input. So how well your body can cope with stress. If your oxygenation is really, really good, right? Your VO2 max is really, really good. Your heart doesn't have to pump 1,000 times a minute to get blood, to get oxygen where it needs to go. You just have a very efficient use of the blood flowing through your arteries and your veins. And because of that efficiency, your heart can just kind of beat nice and easy. So it's an indicator of other things. And it's also just good for your heart in general.
What about the opposite end? Like when you're huffing and puffing and going to your max and doing, let's say, a event like you're training for a triathlon or a race or something. Is there a maximum we should get our heart rate up to?
I don't even know. I don't know if I know that individually there's a max heart rate that I would say don't go above this. I think that everybody is kind of capable of different things. But if you and during exercise as well, I don't know, that your body's doing what it needs to do to kind of cope. But we don't really, we could probably measure heart rate up to like a certain point, like it gets to 200 something, and then all of a sudden it just is in fibrillation. It's just kind of jostling, you know what I mean? And nothing's really happening. The blood's no longer pumping anymore because it's just literally vibrating. So past a certain point, it kind of becomes a moot point. And when that point is reached, you're passed out on the sidewalk and you need defibrillation anyway. So I don't think that's really I wouldn't think of it as like a useful metric. And I think it's different for every person. So it's not like, oh, while I'm exercising, my heart rate got up to 280. What's wrong? It's like, well, if your heart rate's at 280, you're probably not pumping much blood. You're probably not running very, very well at that point. And so, yeah, I wouldn't think of it as a useful measure.
Guys, are we obsessing about all this data, or is this really like, will this translate into useful information to help us live longer? I mean, we're wearing 3, Wahoo and a Garmin and a, Strava and all of these things at once. Is it obsessing and too much, or is this like really, really beneficial?
I think it's empowering, definitely. It can be obsessive, so there's a balance. But I do think there's so much information out there, and it's something that, based on any individual's goals, and outlook, they have the tools. But like Casey said, like if I go to my, primary care physician and come in with like all my sleep score data and my continuous glucose, and they've got 15 minutes to talk about, what I should do next, they probably aren't going to give me, maybe there's some things that they can guide me towards, but like that precision and, time that I spend there is probably not going to have as much of an impact on my health span or lifespan as the time that I invest on by myself. Like, there's so many really good podcasts out there that I can listen to while I'm biking. I don't need to know this. Like I can try to gather the science and that sort of thing. But like, it's really healthy for me to understand what are the actual daily practices and the habits and the things that I can do on a regular basis. And we have the tools to go measure. So I feel like it's really empowering personally. Uh, and as a 43-year-old that does care about health span and lifespan, but sometimes I might be a little bit on the precision edge in terms of like, I want to make sure that the measurements that I get are accurate, which is why I got, the two devices to measure my
Hmm.
heart rate so that I could see. And I only wear one of them now, but doing a test for a few weeks or a month or some period of time to just kind of figure out what's the best fit was helpful for me to just
Yeah.
have some comfort that, hey, you know what? My Garmin's measuring pretty accurately. I probably don't need to wear two devices.
Yeah. That's a good point. Wes, what for you, what are the most important metrics to track?
I think VO2 max is probably number one with with Casey. I think I agree. I think another one could be like grip strength or maybe your ability to squat, your body weight, bench press, maybe 80% of your body weight or something like that, or maybe do like farmer walks, some sort of strength measurement. With the grip strength, it could be maybe even just like a dead hang for 60 seconds or something like that. I think those are all like something that I really think about is the degradation over time of our strength, and cardio. But I think you lose strength kind of at kind of a slower rate, and it's harder to keep up over time. So getting my strength to a higher point now, so that as time goes on, I kind of have more of a tail versus if you don't do any strength training, you still get weaker, but you'll hit kind of like a harder place to be in life. So I think some sort of strength training metric would be really important too. That and then yeah, I think Casey hit it though. I think VO2 max is kind of like the number one for overall fitness and health.
Wes, what do you look at daily? What metrics do you look at every day?
Sleep score, I do kind of track heart rate variability in relation to that. So my base is like 50 to 60 milliseconds. And I know if I'm below that, then I probably didn't get very good sleep. I probably need to take it easy today. I'm probably stressing or overworked. So heart rate variability is something I do look at every day. I would say those are probably the main two, because like VO2 max or like resting heart rate, I think takes a while to affect that.
What about you, Mike? Do you track anything every single day?
I mean, I can look at my watch and tell you how many steps I've had. I can tell you, I do look at my sleep score every day. I generally have kind of a habit that I try to track in a week. Am I getting, X amount of runs or like I do target zone two. I want to get, as much zone two in as possible. So yeah, I mean, it's more of a kind of daily, I'll put a routine together, but as far as wearables go, just really my sleep score and then I see my steps as well. I don't really like guide towards
What's
my
your
steps
step
because
goal?
well, so on the Garmin, it's like adaptive. So if I, do a lot, like say I go for a long hike and I, I have 20,000 steps one day, then tomorrow my step goal is going to be a little higher. So I think the base it's somewhere around 10K and it kind of like goes up and down a little bit there. But I don't track it too closely only because I do so many other things. Like when I bike, I don't get a single step in, but I might have biked for 2 hours. It doesn't identify that as a step. So I don't watch that one. I don't pay too much mind to that unless I'm like not doing something. And then I'm like, holy cow, I didn't do anything today. Plus I'm like at 4,000 steps. What did I do today?
Yeah. Is there any metrics that you want to start tracking or you guys are interested in start looking at?
I haven't tracked HRV as closely, but I do understand the importance of it. So that's one that I may start tracking, but also start kind of, I do a lot of breath work as well. And so I might start monitoring how that impacts HRV.
What about you, Wes?
Just the glucose thing that we talked about today, that sounds like an exciting thing to track as far as like personal reaction to different foods. That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, I might get us all some glucose monitors and we can come back and just look at all of the foods and how it affected us.
Eat a bunch of sugar one day and then
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
think that'd be super fun to talk about. Okay, cool. Casey, you talked about how this data could really improve doctors' visits if we had these wearables and this data was going to the doctors. how it could really improve things. Could they ever replace doctor visits or change doctor visits, do you think?
I think everything is probably going to be replaced with AI after enough time passing, but no, I don't think so. Generally speaking, with all this data, as a primary care physician trained in the current allopathic Western medicine machine, I feel like it's too specialized for most primary care docs to really do much with the information. The people that come in with this kind of info are already kind of doing what we preach every day. We're like, hey, just get around, get moving, watch your diet, do the right things. And so for most primary care physicians, they would just look at you and be like, you're already doing everything I would
Hmm.
recommend. If you want a little more actionable data, you should probably go see like a performance, specialist or something. Because the people that are really into this could look at that data, dig into it, and be like, all right, yeah, like no, you're doing really, really good with this, but I'm noticing a little bit of deficit with your sleep. Like, let's talk about your routine, and let's talk about what you're doing. Let's talk about when you're drinking, how much, all that stuff. So I think that's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two is I don't think that AI is coming anytime soon for in-person physician visits, simply because when I see somebody, there's a lot of subconscious pattern recognition that goes into just training for a number of years and decades where, I might notice the color of someone's skin and how they're breathing, not just their respiratory rate, but, what muscles they're using to breathe. And sometimes people can't describe stuff very well. They're just kind of like, I don't know, I just feel kind of crummy. I've just kind of got this thing going. And the doctor kind of being present and looking at a patient and doing a good physical exam, I still think there's something untapped by technology that humans have. These evolutionary pattern recognition stuff that we've just, we are the best AI we've developed so far, millennia of pattern recognition and things like that. And so the data just helps us to kind of shortcut getting to the objective data. And it also helps us give big umbrella recommendations to like the general population to improve public health. But eventually, sure, there will be a camera that's good enough to detect whether someone's skin is slightly, pallorous or the color's off or they're diaphoretic. Eventually there will be a microphone that can hear the quality of someone's breaths and hear coarse breath sounds and determine the difference between a rail and a crackle and, a bunch of other things that we learn about in medical school. But eventually, that's kind of like, I don't know, that's far off. And I don't know, I think by the time we get to that level of technology, that level of tech, people will be like cyborgs anyway. Like they're going to have an implantable device that tells them their exact skin temperature, the salt content of their sweat, the sodium and lactate content of the interstitial fluids. And, at that point, doctors will be cyborgs too, and we'll all just be on the same train together. And, I don't know. So it's not going to
Sounds like an
replace doctor
episode of Black
visits.
Mirror.
Yeah, it's not going to replace doctor visits anytime soon. But I think it gives you really good data to empower you to choose healthy habits. And then every once in a while, there will be an outlier that it clues you into that leads you to go seek a doctor's guidance. And that may clue you into something that's really needs pharmacologic intervention or needs surgical intervention. For that reason, I'm fully on board with it. And I'm excited to see where the technology goes. There's so many cool things I think that are going to pop up, and they'll be simple and beautiful and elegant. And we'll be like, man, I can't believe we didn't think of that. Like, but it's going to be really cool to see how it develops.
Awesome. All right, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys coming on. I think that's it. That's the podcast, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yo. Two dudes on the mic, keeping health in sight. Dr. Goodman and Ben making wellness feel right. From workouts to hacks and science that's real. Dudes talking health, the conversation you feel. Two dudes on the mic, keeping health in sight. Dr. Goodman and Ben making wellness feel right. From workouts to hacks and science that's real. Dudes talking health, the conversation you feel. Two dudes on the mic, keeping health in sight. Dr. Goodman and Ben making wellness feel right. From workouts to hacks and science that's real. Dudes talking health, the conversation you feel.